Hey guys! Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I will explain the story of the film Fear Street Part 1, 1994. This film is in the form of a trilogy which is coming in the month of July. This is the first film. The second and third films are Fear Street 1978 and Fear Street 1666. These three films are based on the famous horror book series Fear Streets by author Russell Stein. He has written more than 50 Fear Street books. If you want to read it, then the link is in the description. The story of the film is about two twin towns, Shadyside and Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale was a rich and booming town, whereas Shadyside was infamous as a killer capital of the USA. For years, mysterious serial killings, accidents, suicides and crimes were happening in Shadyside. Here an urban legend of which Sarah Fear was popular for many years. People believed that it was the witch who made them commit violent crimes. It was such a popular urban legend that people even made a nursery rhyme over it. At the beginning of the film, we see a teenage girl, Heather. She was working till midnight in the bookstore of a Shadyside mall. The mall was now closed. Now Heather asks her friend Ryan to drop her home. Ryan was excited as his shift was also ending in 15 minutes. Here we see Martin, a janitor who was cleaning the mall. It's rather odd, I must say, cleaning the mall at midnight. Now Ryan hears a lady's whispering voice, which confuses him. Further, Heather was closing the store, then suddenly the books in the store started falling on their own. Upon checking it, there was no one except Heather. Then a man wearing a skull mask advances towards Heather. He starts putting a knife in her stomach. Heather screams and blocks the knife with the book. Obviously, this scene is in homage to the movie Scream, released in 1996. Heather panics and starts running. The skull mask man follows her. Heather hides in another counter and calls 911. After a few minutes, mask man finds her, and this time he pokes the knife into her. Heather starts running again, but this time she falls down. While fighting, Heather removes the mask of the attacker. To her surprise, it was none other than Ryan. He seemed as if he was possessed. The police officer Nick Good comes in time and shoots Ryan in the head. While dying, Ryan inserts a knife into Heather's stomach, due to which she also dies. You can watch the first 5-minute video of this film on Netflix's official YouTube channel. This crime becomes a headline. Here we also get a quick recap of the historical crimes that happened at the Shadyside. All these crime stories are part of this film series, which we will see in this film and in the next two films. Last night Ryan killed 7 people, among them were a few Shadyside High School students. Heather was one of them. Officer Good says all this in the news. Here we see another teenager, Dina, who had a breakup with her girlfriend, Sam. Sam went from Shadyside High School to Sunnyvale High School. Dina's brother Josh was a nerd who was a member of the online witch community. He was secretly cheating with an unknown handler named Queen of Air and Darkness. Josh thinks these 7 killings are again the result of Sarah Fear's possession. Josh had a lot of interests in this witch theory. He had done a lot of research on Shadyside crimes and collected a ton of files, images, and resources on Sarah Fear. But Dina here thinks her brother's interest is stupid, and she takes him to school with her. At school, Dina meets her friends, Kate and Simon. Here we also see messages of condolence on Heather's locker. Kate and Simon were in the business of selling illegal prescription drugs at school. Rumors in school were that the witch was behind these killings, as the killer wore a skull mask, which was a clear sign of a normal person gone insane. That's why to remind everyone about it, some idiot student spray-painted witch's rhyme on the girls' toilet. There were lines like these. She will rise from the grave, make good men her slaves. She will take your blood, she will take your head. She will follow you till you are dead. Dina finds all this legend a stupid hoax, and she also scolds Simon for selling drugs, as Simon's brother Timothy had barely survived an overdose a few days earlier. Here Dina and Sam were both cheerleaders. Dina left the sport after her breakup with Sam. Tonight there was going to be a match between Shadyside and Sunnyvale football teams. Here the Sunnyvale team was planning to hold a candle vigil to pay tribute to the students who died on the mall massacre. For this, the PE teacher makes Dina and the rest of the students' attendance compulsory. Dina goes to the Sunnyvale school along with her costume and the rest of the students. There she saw Sam with a guy named Peter who was a footballer. Peter was literally groping Sam, which irks Dina. The enmity between the two teams was quite old. During the vigil itself, both the teams started fighting. After the match, Sam meets Dina, where Dina wishes her a goodbye by giving her some of her belongings. Dina was angry here as her heart was broken. Later, Peter and Sunnyvale footballers were following the Shadyside football team bus from their car. They were abusing them, throwing bottles at them. Sam was also with them in the car. Dina gets very angry seeing this. She opens the emergency exit door and goes to pour ice cubes on them. But Kate stops her and says you are bleeding from the nose. When Dina starts checking her nose, the ice box accidentally falls from her hand and directly lands on the incoming Sunnyvale's car, causing a car accident. Later we see Sam crawling out of the car. She was bleeding from the nose too. Now her hand soaked in blood goes under the soil as the place was soft. Along with this, Sam starts seeing some visions and hearing voices. Later we see Dina, Simon and Kate beside Sam, and they apologize to her. Sam vomits blood here, which falls on Simon's shirt and Dina's boot. Later, Peter threatens Dina for a car crash. All these kids lie to Officer Good by saying it was just an accident. Now we hear a lady's whispering voice from Peter's car crash site. On next day evening, Dina was watching news on TV, where janitor Martin was giving a bite to a reporter. Martin says Ryan was a good person, he enjoyed reading comics. Martin also believed that Ryan was possessed. The police had now declared Ryan to be a serial killer. On the same night we see a man wearing a skull mask in front of Dina's house. Dina thinks it's Peter who has arrived here to prank her. Dina comes inside the house after shouting at him for minutes. After a few moments, we see the same man in front of Dina's kitchen. This time there was a knife in his hand. This time Josh also saw that man. Dina angrily goes out with a knife, but that guy vanished in thin air. Dina angrily sends a message on the pager to Kate. Oh man! How can we forget those days when we used to send messages on that little black box? Feeling really nostalgic. Kate and Simon were doing babysitting work in one house. Simon wore the same shirt he had last night, the one on which Sam's blood was all over. Kate asks Simon to change it. Kate reads Dina's message and calls her back. Dina tells her about stalking Peter. Suddenly there was some noise in Kate's house too. Upon checking it, the same skull mask man was there too. He was looking for something in the clothes. As soon as he sees Kate and Simon, he disappears. Later we see confused Simon and Kate arrive at Dina's house, where Simon was wearing the same shirt with blood stains. These three were very angry with Sam. As for them, it seemed the prank has gone too far. These three and Josh arrive at the hospital where Sam was admitted. Dina accuses Peter of pranks, which Sam denies. Sam says Peter was with me this whole time. Upon seeing Peter there, Dina starts arguing with Sam. Suddenly we see blood coming out of Peter's mouth, where that skull mask man has stabbed him. Sam and Dina scream in panic and start to run away from him by attacking him. The rest of the kids also started running as they also saw the skull mask man. In a hurry, they hijack an ambulance parked outside the hospital. How convenient, somebody just left an ambulance for kids to drive around like a toy. Sam and Dina hide at the reception counter where Skull Mask Man kills a few nurses. Later he tries to attack Sam, but Dina attacks him first from behind. She opens his mask and we see Ryan again. This dead dude was killing people, whom Dina identifies as Ryan from news. She was confused and in panic, so without thinking much she ran away from him. Now the kids are at the police station and explaining everything to Officer Good. Here we see Martin being arrested for some petty crimes which he denies. Officer Good shows these kids the photo of Ryan and says, "I myself have killed this boy. Dead can't kill people." He knew the lying habit of these kids, hence he does not take the words of these kids seriously. Dina starts shouting angrily while leaving the station. She pushes another officer and steals his pistol. We see Simon taking a leak around a corner where he hears an old song. A teenage girl was sitting by the roadside of the road and was singing that song. As Simon approaches her, she attacks his legs with a shaving blade. Simon starts running, but she drops him and sits on top of him. While these two were fighting, the girl's locket fell away. She was about to run the blade blindly on Simon, then Dina fires shots at her from behind. Simon gets up and starts running while the attacker girl also gets up. Apparently, she hadn't died and black liquid was coming out of her body. Later we see these kids at Dina's house where Simon was completely freaked out. He explains everything exactly how it happened. On hearing this, Josh brings up one old newspaper clipping, which was about that teenager, Ruby Lane. He asks Simon if this is that girl, to which Simon says yes. Now Josh starts narrating the Shadyside's history. It was said that Ruby Lane was a teenager who had murdered her friends and died by cutting her hand with a shaving blade. In the year 1978, a psycho killed several people at Camp Nightwing. In 1950, a milkman named Harry Rooker killed several housewives. 1935 Humpty Couple Killer Case, 1922 Billy Barker Case, 1904 Grifter Guts Girls Case, 1666 Pastor Miller Case. All these people were normal before, but suddenly they changed. By showing these things, Josh justifies his witch theory about this town. Here Kate recognizes the 1978 incident as her aunt died there. Sam can't digest this brutal history, she starts vomiting blood again. Dina takes care of her, and these two start talking. These two were now coming close again as they discussed their pain and feeling. Sam says she had no choice but to go to Sunnyvale as her mom got divorced. Sam was hesitant to openly accept her sexuality and love towards Dina. Meanwhile, Josh continues with his lecture and says in the year 1666, Sarah Fear was hanged by people for witchcraft. Since then she has been taking revenge and has been committing crime by possessing good men of the town. Many people believe that she cheated death before dying. As written in the nursery rhymes, just before she died, she did a trick by cutting her cursed hand. She made a deal with the devil to take revenge on the town's people for generations to come. Here Josh believes that this story is true and that the witch is really behind all this. Kate here raises an important question of why they are being haunted. What have they done wrong to her? Sam answers this question by saying, I saw the witch yesterday. Near the car crash site, I had a few visions, I am pretty sure it was her. All the kids now come to the crash site in an ambulance. Sam puts his hand in the mud by the side of the car. There she finds some bones. Josh finds a lock on which Fear was written. This means that yesterday Sam inadvertently disturbed the grave of Sarah Fear. Simon here suggests a silly idea. He says, like in the film Poltergeist, if we fix this grave and apologize, then there may be a chance that she will spare us. Josh likes this idea, and kids start to rearrange those bones in a proper order. Meanwhile, Sam's nose was bleeding again. When she touches bone with her blood-smeared hand, she gets that vision again. This time she hears a voice saying, "It's you. It's you." Meaning the witch was only behind Sam and not the rest of the kids. The kids now close the grave and say sorry. At the same time, we see another witch's henchman advancing towards these kids. He was the Nightwing Killer of 1978. He starts attacking everyone with an axe. The kids survive somehow and start running again in the ambulance. Here Sam explains to everyone that the witch is really just after her, the rest have nothing to do with her. But Dina here disagrees and says, what about the skull-masked man attacking her at her own house? What about he attacking Kate and Simon at their babysitting house? Then Kate suddenly stops the ambulance and says the masked man was not stalking us. He was searching for some clothes. She then tears Simon's jacket and shows the blood-stained shirt. She points at Dina's shoes which were also stained with blood. Kate says the henchmen are using Sam's blood as a GPS tracker. Josh now suggests an idea of using Sam as a bait to kill these henchmen. To which Dina objects. But Sam agrees, and these kids go ahead with their plan. The officer Good checks the hospital where he finds dead bodies. He also finds Ruby's necklace on the road. All these kids arrive at school and take a good shower to clean any trace of blood. Later, Dina cuts Sam's hand and collects a few drops of her blood in a bucket. Simon fetches some highly flammable chemicals and pours them around the girl's toilet. Josh also rubs water filled with Sam's blood around the toilet. All these kids now make Sam sit on that toilet. There was an opening above to escape. Dina, Simon, Josh and Kate were now waiting outside. After some time, Skull Mask, Ruby, Nightwing Killer arrives at the school and goes straight to the toilet. As soon as they enter the room, Kate locks them in. Dina sets the fire. The fire starts burning all three of them. Yes, here Sam had run away from the toilet through that opening above. After some time, the kids see a black sludge everywhere. But like in the Terminator Part 2 film, this sludge was rejoining again. Meaning these henchmen were unkillable. Now we see kids hiding in a classroom. Kate says we tried everything we could to save Sam from the witch's curse, but now it's time. If it's really Sam that the witch needs, then it's better we give her that, else we all will die. Sam says yes to this, but Dina says no. She tries to stop Sam from leaving the room, but Simon grabs her. Now Sam was waiting outside the room when Josh found one of his old news clippings. He was carrying all his data in his backpack, apparently. Anyway, he says, in the year 1978 there was one girl named C. Berman who claimed that she too saw the witch. She was the sole survivor of the massacre. Dina calls C. Berman by getting her number from the telephone directory. Yes, those were the days when privacy was public. Dina gets no response as it was on the answering machine. Later Sam finds out that C. Berman survived that massacre by dying first. She was clinically dead for a few minutes. Then later was revived by CPR. The kids now decide to try this dangerous method all by themselves, as they had no option. We now see Officer Good in front of a deserted house. He put a message under that house, in which it was written, "It's happening again." Meaning, it is clear that the good officer knew something that he was not telling anyone. Maybe we will come to know about it in the next movie. All the kids now come to the same mall which we saw in the first scene. It was late at night, so there was no one in the mall. This was Simon's part-time workplace too. Here he tells about his brother Timothy's case, how he died of drug overdose, and how he was saved from an adrenaline injection. He also gives all the drugs to Sam and asks her to take it at an interval. He gives Dina adrenaline injections. Sam asks Kate to go home as she doesn't want to put her in danger. Kate decides to remain with her friend till the very end. So nice. Now Simon, Kate and Josh go to different parts of the mall by smearing Sam's blood on them so as to distract the killers. Now Sam takes the drug pill. For some time killers didn't arrive, but when Sam was fully wasted, Skull Mask arrived. He tries to attack her and Dina, but Kate arrives in time and sets him on fire. This pisses him off as he starts chasing her. Later he catches her and shreds her face in a shredding machine. Dina was running with Sam where she lost the rest of her drugs. In order to save Sam from the henchmen, Sam's heart needed to be stopped by any cost. Dina now immerses Sam's face in a fish tank so that she can die by drowning. Kate dies a horrible death. Simon and Josh were seeing Kate's dead body in shock. Just then, the Nightwing killer hits Simon in the head with an axe. Simon also dies. Skull Mask Man was now chasing Josh, who falls in front of Dina. Suddenly, Sam's heart stops due to drowning. She dies clinically. As soon as she dies, the Skull Mask Man disappears. Dina gives Sam 3 adrenaline injections, due to which Sam comes to her senses after a few moments. Later Officer Good takes a separate interview of Sam, Dina, and Josh where all 3 tell a bunch of lies again. Officer Good says after taking a good look at Sam, "You are looking like a ghost." He declares Simon and Kate to be victims of a drug-related cartel gang war. Next night when Dina and Sam were intimate, Dina gets a call from Lady C. Berman. Berman says, "You are alive as of now, you have stopped the henchmen of the witch but not the witch. She makes the rules. You are not safe." Here we see some glimpses of that witch. She was doing some rituals. There were names of all the people who were possessed by the witch. Now Sam's name gets added to it. Dina turns around where we see possessed Sam. She stabs Dina. After a struggle, Dina subdues Sam and ties her up, just as Josh runs back upstairs. Dina then looks at Sam and vows to bring her back from possession. All while Sam roars at her. We also see an end credits in the film where Dina and Josh meet C. Berman. She starts telling them her 1978 story, which is the story of the second film in this series. So friends, this was the story of the film Fear Street Part 1, 1994. The film is set at a very fast pace. It may seem exhausting at first, but overall, it's a good film. I will explain its next 2 parts also on this channel, so please subscribe and like it.